Greetings from Lake Superior. This is Jill Kesti from Coalition to End Forced Psychiatric Drugging on Facebook. I'm here again today doing a YouTube video, and I had a nice conversation earlier with an Intuitive Public Radio on forced drugging and suicide and what works, what doesn't work mainly, and discussed a lot of things. It was great. It made me come out here today, and today I'm going to spend some time reading from my diary. I've got it right here, and it's falling apart, but I'll do my best. I just wanted to give people an idea of what I've gone through and the places that my mind was at when I was suffering and going through some very traumatic times in my life. I was also coming off of medications at this time, hallucinating daily, having severe problems. I couldn't really function. This episode, or this diary entry, starts October 9th, 2014. I woke up with the image of Jean-Luc Picard pulling one of the cords of his Borg outfit off of his body. Very positive image, disconnecting from the Borg mind, his fight to get back to where he was, who he was, human. I am still so confused as to what has been happening to me. So much despair, so much fear, so much anger, so much grief. Most of it not personal, but world-related. There is such atrocity, such waste of resources, such pain inflicted upon others, such old, damaging ways of getting energy, such inability to communicate to others, such misunderstanding of other cultures, ages, races, sexes. My awareness was so messed up. I was so lost. But it could easily be that my awareness was so clear. I was so not lost too. Both seemingly felt right, and the vacillations between the two were what would be termed the bipolar. Seeing both sides of the same coin and feeling them at the same time. Hearing noises that were unexplainable and seemed relevant to the thoughts I was having. A color, a sign, a number, a word, all things were relevant. All were symbols. They are still prominent. I remember the time in Owasso Hospital, waking up in the night, coughing so hard that I was choking, like I was trying to expel some sort of demon from my chest. Scared, so terrified beyond any terror. That was years ago. Last year's terror was 10,000 times greater, and it lasted and lasted and is still with me. Fear. Fear of death, fear of living, fear that I can't do anything, fear that I'm unable to bring myself to do anything. Like yesterday. All day knowing I had to bring my pepper plants inside. All day I waited. I took 2 naps. I tried to get to it. I went to Vinnie's and found a vacuum sealer for $4 that is brand new, which I've been wanting, but I felt nothing, no joy. On the 40% knick-knack shelf, I found some cute Siamese cats from Japan and 3 others too, but no joy. Joy can't be found in stuff and things anymore. There was a tiny bit of satisfaction because I did have that sealer on my list, but it didn't make me happy. This whole journey since the last break, parentheses, through, has been a voyage of discovering what feelings are, what emotion is, what the bad ones feel like, what the good ones feel like. Trying not to call them bad or good. Trying not to call people bad or good. Trying not to see actions as bad or good. Trying not to. When I was quote-unquote frozen from fear, after running from it failed, After fighting, it failed. I thought that I was dead. I was at Cedar Bay, and several visual hallucinations in my mind came during those times. Blank was literally stamped and made into a postage stamp. Pema Chodron reference, my world was as small as a postage stamp. An evil psychiatrist who was talking to me saying, you just go ahead and try and figure this out. The cat's shit in the litter box was breathing, and they ran from it too. All my internal body sensations were talking to me when I was downstate, unable to function after the 3-month flight of my mind into mania. All of the people of the world were in my body. There was the absolute nightmare of my brain being sawed in half. I was at a huge techno concert, and I saw the split of the large crowd of people in my head separate, like Moses parting the waters. They parted, with the crowd going right, half to the left. It was Judgment Day, and I was judge, jury, and executioner. After that split, there was the killings. The train was going by 20 times a day in Charlotte, and it was the meat slicer. The kids of the world, the people of the world, were all being cut up for dinner, like sandwich meat. When I got on Facebook, I would see who was online and think those were the next ones to be sliced up, killed, on the line. Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. Who's next? Who by fire? Who by water? Death and destruction, chaos, terror. The people of the world in my own body began journeying. Those who escaped the initial holocaust of the split brain. I felt them going through my body and circulating in my blood, literal people marching. I was a giant, and everyone I knew was within me, searching, walking the mapped and unmapped terrain. For what? I don't know. A reason to go on? To live? The Holy Grail? Bring out your dead. Every nerve came alive during this time as the feet of the marchers rang throughout my system, loudly firing footsteps. As the sensations circled my body for weeks, it felt like I was growing angel wings. They were being carved into my back, and I thought constantly that there were real people inside my body, hammering things, fixing things, moving things around, destroying things. I lost all sense of what was happening internally versus externally. I was and felt both simultaneously. My skin was no longer a boundary. My mind was outside, as it is, and I was fluctuating back and forth from the outside to the inside, so fast that it felt interminably slow. Opposites ceased to exist in this blurring. I was the earth, the outside, as well as myself, the inside, at the same time. Transcended duality. It was horrifyingly undescribable. The flood, when it came, was exactly as it was described in the Bible, except it was inside my head, but happening outside of my house. It was thundering and lightning and raining outside, for real, but the storm was inside my brain, and electricity was firing constantly. Flashes of lightning, going off, catching on fire, spreading out of control. The end of both my and the outside world. The rains kept coming, trying to drown the fires. In my brain, I was lying on the couch in the sunflower room, scared to death, and the waters kept rising and rising. I couldn't stop them. 40 days. 40 days. The rain kept coming. All the people inside of me were drowning. They were dying by the millions. It was devastating. The waters kept rising, and I was screaming inside, but physically, I could not move or turn away from the internal visions of the apocalypse in my own head. My ego was trying to reassert itself. A voice lost in the wilderness. Someone help me, and I will make these storms stop. Please, someone help me. And blank, my neighbor came. He knocked on my door. I acted normal, and he came in and sat with me, not knowing I was dying inside, scared to death. Whenever I left the house, or someone called, or someone came by that didn't know of my breakthrough history, I could act normal, although everything was but. Just as in the hospital, I would put it together or do what a normal person does. I was amazed that I could, number one, do so, and that number two, that no one could see that I was psychotic on the inside. To me, the outside and inside were glaringly obvious. I was still 100% certain people could read my thoughts. So naked I was, so without the ability to mask my true self. And the true self was my evil side that was slicing people up in my brain on the train meat slicer. The squeal of the wheels on the tracks were the pigs being sacrificed hourly. The pigs being the children, actual pigs. Same difference, life ending, us eating, omnivores, cannibals, human consumption, overconsumption, bacon posts on Facebook just everywhere. Proof that this slaughter was happening. It was no joke. Cops are pigs. I'm going to skip part of this. All of it, every second of every day since the week before 4th of July 2013, has been ultra awareness in action. I felt the need to circle that, I guess. It's like the veil between inside and outside reality, the buffer against my feelings, the fog that obscures reality, the blurriness of nearsightedness, the organization of unorganized ideas is gone. Like the scales fell from my eyes, no defenses, no more illusion to hide within. This is the constant deja vu that I feel, like this is a life that I've lived before, like I'm finally living the life I saw before I incarnated, like I'm reading my book of life that I got to read before I was born. Every angle, or every single action, feeling, thought, sight, and hearing is familiar, too familiar. So familiar it feels uncomfortable and unnerving. Trying constantly to not feel like this, but I can't because I've somehow got the will to not use alcohol and dull this awareness, or to turn to pot to feel okay with this awareness. Just living with it. Thoughts of it, this feeling, keep me from partaking in old behaviors that used to come naturally, like working on cleaning, organizing, reading, decorating, etc. To think/feel, I've already done this. I've already seen this. Puts a block on taking action. Why bother? Comes up a lot. What's the point? If it is already written, what difference does anything make? The despair is still there within me. The destruction of my own life, job, and house downstate, which I'm 100% responsible for, has prevented me from beginning anything again, since each time I've recovered in the past, this breakthrough, quote unquote, happens again and again anyway. And I need to start all over again, so why build anything? The future is not worth considering, but it must be, according to the main world. This is where I get stuck. Why bother versus I must? It's a disintegration of all that I thought mattered. Stuff doesn't matter anymore. Only people, animals, and life itself matters. Only this planet and the movement toward unconditional love, compassion, empathy, health, wellness, honesty, understanding, non-judgment of dissimilar cultures, people, sexes, ethnicities, etc., integrity, balance, harmony, sharing, reverence for life, etc., matters now. Work? Well, money? Well, these things, they don't matter, but they do, because they are, and they are necessary. What if they were transformed to action and energy exchange? Language. So many things seem to need revising, fixing up, action taken upon to improve. But the whole world is too busy killing each other to do any of that. The governments of the world, the people in charge, really need to reorder their priorities. I guess that's all I'm doing, figuring out what mine are, trying to find my own balance. When there was nothing left worth living for, to now, what do I care about? Daily fight to consider money in all this. If I am granted disability, maybe then I can finally take that out of my worry mind and truly see what there is that matters. If anything at all does. Yesterday I was so full of despair. Today I feel more optimistic. October 14th, 2014. What is insanity? To question the basic tenets of this notion and its application to my own mental state daily is what is insane. Society has compartmentalized, labeled, and defined what is deemed acceptable behavior, quote unquote acceptable behavior, when there really, in actuality, is no such thing. As a group of humans, we've decided what is and is not acceptable, and we've forgotten we decided it. That makes the definitions static, immovable, fixed, concrete, etc. And anyone not sticking or staying within the confines of the definitions acceptable, unacceptable, and therefore not worthwhile, an assault on a person's self-esteem, which according to Zukov is at the root of the fear column iceberg. My biggest fear used to be fitting in, not having friends, not making money, not being liked, not being special. These fears are today a lot less than they once were. Now I'm more afraid of, number one, paying for basic needs like heat, car insurance, food, etc. Below that, I'm afraid I'm going to have physical pain. I'm afraid that humans are causing catastrophic damage to the high environment, damage that may be irreversible. When that Kundalini energy, or whatever it was, came flying up, bursting through all the blocks in my body, circulating everywhere, out of control, I was so certain of everything. I knew the meaning of life, the reason I had been born. There was clarity and there was no fear. I was the smartest person on earth. I was in touch with the mysteries of life on a nonverbal level. I was no longer perceiving things in a dual way. I was beyond language. I was beyond time, beyond the past, the present, and the future. I was beyond my physical body. I was separate from my five senses. It didn't last long. New World Order. Currently watching Thrive again. The strong feeling that this mental health, quote, issue has come to help me align with what is really important. None of the above things, but environmental balance, harmony, and reverence for life. Moving away from greed towards equality of basic needs for everyone. No elite, no poor. Balance of humans living with nature as a part of nature, not apart from nature. Money has to go. It's not even real. It has lost its helpfulness and is contributing to the world destruction. All ills can be traced back to money. All ills. How to move away from this system? Well, the memory of me feeling 100% solely responsible for the 9/11 disaster, the dropping of my breasts one at a time, each becoming a plane, and it flying into the World Trade Center towers. Feminine energy uniting to make this come about, agreeing on a soul level to contribute to this attack in order to create more awareness. That was my first, one of my first episodes. All this past year and a half, equals myself finally doing things that are not as contributing to what I see as a destructive pathway to the future. I have become conscious. I have woken up. I am trying to figure out what I think will help others, the environment, the world, the future. It came about because of such immense fear that arose within me based on my experiences, my upbringing, my loves, my secret hates, my angers, my compassion. I was overcome by such grief. Allegories and metaphors from the Bible in every book on my shelves at home, screaming at me the obvious message. We are heading toward destruction. We can stop this. We can't stop this. We are heading toward rebirth. The back and forth, the constant crying, and the trillion voices in my head, in the external world. It all seemed like I was the source, that I wrote all those books, that I was Jesus and Satan and God. I remember the Mormon boys who came to my house. What does she eat? After I turned into the omnivore of all omnivores in my head. Blueberries in my smoothie were my own two blue eyes. Classical music was Silence of the Lambs, eating human flesh. Transparency. If all people show they have nothing to hide, talk and communicate around the world, honesty and goodness will be seen to be the dominant traits of everyone, even the so-called labeled deviant, crazy, disruptive, bad, and criminal. In, say, one criminal's life, their criminal actions seen in the context of their entire life, i.e. from birth on, the one labeled action will seem obviously done as a result of so many events that the blip in their entire life will become the insignificant thing it is and should be forgiven, as it couldn't possibly be seen as an indicator of applying the label criminal or other negative terms because of it. With a broader view, the action may even be seen as necessary or just what it was, and it shouldn't mar the human being forever. We can't remain fixed on these labels. We cannot focus on the denser negative action at one point. That destroys the individual. I was always thinking I would put my whole story, be open, confess publicly everything, and maybe others would identify. Others might see how fixed judgment based on 1 or even 100 actions, such as blah 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 blah, can contribute to the creation of massive mental psychosis. That feeling that Jake and others' souls were reading my diaries, people were aware of all that I'd done, that this had been done, and that I'd published it all, and future souls had read it and come back to push me to destroy my life last year by picking up drug use again, thereby opening in me the vulnerability of spirits to control my fixed ego, bent on living in the mainstream and ignoring the mission that had been calling and guiding me since birth. Wow, I think a lot differently today. The quote-unquote thoughts of God, this is October 24th, 2014. The quote-unquote thoughts of God that I had in the weeks leading up to the 4th of July hospitalization were my own authentic voice, finally trying to break through, plus the voices of everyone inside my brain, which correspond to the split off parts of myself. I am God. So is everyone else. We are all God, source, love, observing ourselves. God is displeased? Well, who wouldn't be? Look around, look around, look around. Red Hot Chili Peppers. And that's what I was going through 6 years ago. 5.5 or so. Yeah. The point is, for today's video, I was going through some heavy stuff, and I wasn't in therapy. I was going through it alone, and I was given drugs to cope with it. And actually, no, I wasn't given the drugs. I was coming off of drugs at this time, and yeah, having a hard time. So back to making support for people who are going through issues like this, where they're having many thoughts that are of many facets of a person's life. There's so many issues, like the thing about the criminal, you know, we label a person for one action in their entire life, and that person is forever, well, I don't know, giving somebody the label bipolar, giving somebody the label schizoaffective, schizophrenic. It's probably beyond its usefulness at this time. We need to start calling people and start helping them instead of drugging them so that they are more cooperative, under control, blanket, tranquilized. And, you know, it would have been nice to have somebody to talk to about these things, and to have some understanding and agreement that the problems that I was facing were humongous. In my mind, I created very large issues. I thought I was responsible for 9/11 disaster. I thought I was responsible for the Boston shooting, or no, it was the bombing of the Boston Marathon, Columbine. And the reason I felt that way was because I supported and agreed with many things wrong with this world. I didn't protest. I went along with what I was told and didn't question. But deep down, I was questioning everything, and seeing the holes in my belief system. And it was very painful, extremely painful to fall apart, not have a supporting belief system. I had many belief systems that were creating cognitive dissonance. It's like, you know one thing, but you also are doing another, so you are feeling uneasy all the time and under stress that you didn't even know existed, because you're patterned, you're conditioned. You just don't have the time to consider deeper questions. Well, a breakthrough makes you consider those deeper questions, and they can be very incapacitating. I'm not saying that everybody needs to have a psycho-spiritual breakthrough, but to understand it better would help people to maybe have more empathy when they see one of their loved ones go through it, and help them. I guess in a way, I wish we could all become trauma informed. The police definitely need to be trained in mental emergency crisis. They definitely don't know how to handle the crisis in a positive way. They're very scary, authoritative figures to me, and to have them come in and forcibly remove you from your home is not in any way helpful when you're in an emotional crisis, psycho-spiritual. So yeah, reading my diary today helped me to remember, how deep the problems were that I was facing at that time. They're very far removed now. My problems are very concrete, concretized, no longer abstract thinking, such as what I was putting in my diary there. I I think a lot differently. I'm stabilized, much more stabilized. And it's not the medications, it's the journey to balance that I have found and been able to go on the last 5 years. The journey to find more balance in my life and less worry, and to accept that I cannot control things, and that I am now doing my part, and I'm not creating more cognitive dissonance on the level that I was living before, when I was living with no awareness of my my actions. Half of my actions were unconscious, and I wasn't happy with them, obviously, and through their destruction of everything that I was doing, I've been able to pick and choose my actions much more wisely, and it's a continuing struggle. Not necessarily struggle, it's continual. It's what life is. It's life. It's just life. You know, everybody struggles with different things at different times. I'm grateful to be much more balanced than when I was writing today. I have nothing but empathy for people who are going through problems. If you're going through problems, I send you love, healing energy, and here's hoping that we can all work together to try to create a better mental health system where people actually get help, or at the very least that they're not further traumatized by the system that exists. Thank you.